Continuing our post-budget reactions, I'm joined by Ashish Bhasin, who's the CEO of the Asia-Pacific region and also chairman of India for the large media company Dentsu Aegis. Thank you very much, Ashish. And we have Sriram Sanjeevi of Livista Coffee. We are having these chats among different groups of people, but pleasure to have you both. Ashish, just to start with you, the media industry, not often spoken about. We don't get enough space. People talk about automotives, people talk about every other sector that impacts you and me. But very few people actually talk about the media industry. But we are the first to be impacted, aren't we? So as one of the biggest leaders of the media industry in India, how do you view this budget in the context of our industry? Broadly, in terms of the signaling it's giving to the rest of the world, because we've all been looking for an inflection moment to come out of the depression.
I think, Arnab, you're absolutely right. Our industry tends to be both the lead and lag indicator in a sense of the way the economy is doing. When there is growth, we benefit a lot from it, which is why I'm really pleased with this budget because it promises growth. Equally, when things go bad, we are perhaps one of the first to be hit in that sense. And what's really beautiful about this budget is that almost everything that it has in it, to me, points towards growth. And when the country grows, when the economy grows, when the GDP grows, advertising tends to grow, in fact, 1.5 times more as a rule of thumb, which I've observed over the past many years. The converse is also true. It falls more. But this time, it's really good news. And I think from our industry's point of view, this is going to be an inflection point, and it's going to be a budget that we will remember for a long time to come, because we've gone through not just the COVID period, but even before that, kind of a slowdown in the advertising market, media market for a few years. This is that point, I feel, which will cause, the animal instincts to be unleashed, as they say.
Absolutely. I do hope so. Let me hear from Sriram. Sriram, you run the coffee business. So you're also, severely impacted by a little bit of sentimental ups and downs. How do you view this budget overall? I think the government has invested in the country, invested in the future of the country. What do you think, Sriram?
Thanks, Arnab, for having me here. When I went through the entire notes of what the Honorable Finance Minister has presented, there were 4 key areas where I thought, the middle class, men and women and the youth have actually more money on the pockets. To begin with, on the infrastructure, I think there is a lot of focus on railways, airports, roadways, as well as metros. What this also does is it generates a lot of new and propels existing employment as well. So therefore, more money in the pocket. The middle class, of course, security, social security has been assured for the gig workers and for more the temporary job holders. So which means that, they get more money on the hand as well. Women are allowed to work now 24 hours and across businesses, which means that in many families, women are already breadwinners, in some cases second breadwinners. So therefore, more money in the pockets. And most importantly, for the youth of the country, I think the startup movement is only getting more attention. So while there is a bit of a disappointment, if I have to say, that there has not been much of a focus on direct taxes or probably reducing indirect taxes, I think directly there is a lot of job generation that's happening. Now, this is something which will impact positively a category like ours, which is coffee. In the South, it's a staple drink. People consume coffee 2, 3, 4 times a day, both at home as well as outside. So I think overall, it's a fantastic budget by the Honorable Finance Minister under the leadership of the Prime Minister. And I think, specific to our category, I'm very sure it's going to do a lot of good.
Yeah, absolutely. Ashish, since you have your ear to the ground, and I'm sure people in the sectors most affected would be talking to you, as well as sectors which have beaten the trend. And viewers, Ashish is a great digital evangelist. He was one of the first people in the media business over a decade back who started investing in digital assets. In fact, Sriram, I wouldn't be surprised if a few years from now, the digital business of Dentsu is bigger than their broadcast business. I should be the last person saying this on a TV channel, but nevertheless. So Ashish, you also know that digital has bucked the trend. So you have your sense of who's doing well, who's being impacted, which sectors are nervous. What are you hearing today? A, B, from your sense, which have been the sectors which have been most affected by the downturn post-COVID?
So, Arnab, I'll answer your digital part first. First of all, that day is not very far. It's probably next year itself. We'll probably have more revenue from digital than the other media.
Awesome.
But I think there is one very hidden message in this budget, which has kind of didn't come out so clearly in the speech, because obviously in the speech, the finance minister just covers the important areas. There was a big significance of the fact that she read the budget out from a tablet which was made in India. And I think there is a huge thrust on digital governance. There is a huge thrust on digital payments. There's a thrust on everything pointing towards digital, which I think is really good for the rapid progress that the country is going to make, and also for better governance and transparency and so on and so forth. Even all this faceless, stuff that Prime Minister spoke about in the case of income tax, this is all digital governance, right? So I think there's a big thrust on digital, which is happening almost unsaid at a below the radar kind of a level, which is coming out now very, very clearly. In terms of which are the sectors that were obviously the obvious ones that were impacted the most are hospitality, travel, etc. But as the opening up is happening, I think they are going to come back quickly. But, there are some sectors, automobiles is one of them, for example, which are almost bellwethers for the economy in some way. Automobiles went through a difficult phase even before COVID. And obviously during the COVID period, everybody was impacted and they were impacted the most. I think automobiles is now making a big comeback not just compared to the lows of the COVID period, but come back in an absolute level. And things like the new scrappage policy for old vehicles, not only does it help the environment, but it will, in a way, act as a boost for that industry. So I think that's a big one in that sense. From an advertising point of view, FMCGs, the staples, what you and I consume and everybody consumes on an everyday basis are most important. They were relatively less impacted during COVID because they were essential goods. But I think what this budget will do is all these things that you're flashing on your screen, for example, from 90 crores now, if 26,000 crores are going to the farmers, this is going into the pockets of the consumers eventually, right? And once this goes to the pockets of the consumers, they are going to buy toothpaste, they're going to buy soap, they're going to buy all daily need items, food products, etc., etc. And I feel that people haven't even got the full impact of this yet, but I feel the whole FMCG sector over the midterm to the long term is actually going to benefit from it. Hopefully, even the monsoon will be good. We've had 2 good monsoons, and now SkyMet has said even the third one is likely to be normal. If that happens with this kind of a budget, I think India is really is poised to be on a growth path. So I find that almost all sectors will benefit, but sectors where consumer spending is concerned, those will benefit a lot more.
Absolutely. And talking about digital, Ashish, the budget has called for an increase in a limit for tax audit for people who carry out 95% of their transactions digitally. So digital is the future. And I think the one thing we need to work together for before the next budget is to ensure that the media industry also gets a special attention. Every industry is called for pre-budget meetings, but Ashish, you should be called for a media industry. We have a long list of things that we want the government to do for us. A long list of things. And Ashish, next time, we're going to make sure you get into those pre-budget meetings. So good to talk to you, Ashish. And going to catch up for coffee with Shriram soon. I thank you both for joining me. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Arnab.
Pleasure.